Right, good evening ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this video where we're going to be tearing down the brand new 2015-2016 CUH-12XX series PlayStation 4. This will be the second time I've been inside one of these things, because just this week, a little bit earlier, we were inside one of these for a wireless card issue. The controllers wouldn't sync. Of course, these are a little bit new to be finding those wireless cards as spare parts. Frustratingly enough, they are a different card on the SAC boards as they have on the SAA and SAB. As we've already seen, the SAA and SAB wireless Bluetooth cards are indeed interchangeable. But with the SAC revision boards in these new CUH-12XX series, they're not, they're completely different. Well, there's a slightly smaller footprint and the pinout is different, so they don't actually fit. But I actually took the, lifted the board off, had a look underneath the EMI shield, replaced a couple of components, put the EMI shield back on, reballed the board, put it back on, and what would you know, it worked. Frustratingly enough, I did want to record it, but there was some quite firm time restrictions on the unit, so I didn't really have the chance. So unfortunately, it didn't get done, and it would have made a good video, so I'm a little bit disappointed, but I'm sure we'll get some more before we're finished. Anyway, so I definitely wanted to tear this one down on camera for you, and we can take a look at reballing it and see what the different processes involved are. So I know one or two of you are looking for a few more tips on the old reballing, which of course we do have a reballing APU tutorial up there, but you know, I'm sure there's one or two things that I can maybe think of. So that's what we're going to look at. So in order to get one of these things apart, it's, well, yeah, it's fairly straightforward, to be honest. Probably not as straightforward as it once used to be, but there we go. So on the rear, first change you'll notice is there are no more black plastic tabs on the back side of this thing. You've got your two warranty sealed stickers there as you normally would, and of course only the two Torx screws to remove this time. They are still T9R, which is nice. I'm just going to get my tub there to keep all the bits and pieces in. Okay, so those two screws are out now. Now then, this is the first big change they've made, and they've actually put, there are two really horrible little tabs down this back edge. So just where it's sort of, where the groove is, there's a tab just here on this side of the case, and one corresponding tab here, which basically means on the old PS4, of course, you could just get hold of it from the middle and lift it forward. You can't do that anymore. What you've actually got to do is lift up from the back, and I suppose you could tug it really hard, but you know, you probably end up shredding your fingers. So actually what you've got to end up doing is you get a screwdriver just in the gap, in the groove there between the two, where the bottom half of the shell meets the rest of the chassis here, and you sort of pry it. Now it's not particularly pleasant, so yeah, like I say, you get a screwdriver just where the two plastic surfaces meet there, and it starts to come up and away, and then obviously you can get hold of it and give it a good pry, and of course the tab comes clear. What I will do, because it is a little bit awkward, you do have to be careful, because obviously you don't want to mark it too much, you know, because these are still relatively new units. You don't want to be tearing up too badly, but I think it's inevitable. There is going to be a little bit of battle scarring going on. There ain't a lot we can do about that. It is really awkward. It's such an awkward place to get to, because you can't actually get anything down that gap because of where it is. So you've just got to sort of pry it out as much as you can, and then get down the side and lift it out. It's really quite a horrible. It's really quite a horrible experience, really. It's but anyway, as you can see there now, that's one side free, so we've got to do the other. Once it's done, as this is now, you are indeed in the bottom half of the shell. And if I can just show you, so basically the tabs sit under these little plastic grooves just here and here, and the actual tabs themselves reside here. I don't know if you can really see that, the light here isn't particularly brilliant because I am missing a bulb, but there it is. There you can just about see it where my screwdriver is. So it's right on that back edge where you can't really get anything, you know, of any decent size in there to get a good price. So you do have to use a little jeweler's screwdriver and be careful not to tear anything up too badly or shred your fingers. Apparently you can give it a good tug to get it free, but to be honest, giving it a good tug to get it free probably will work, but if you slip, you are going to make a mess of your hand. And to be honest, I'd rather not do that. So, next thing is, of course, you want to get the power supply out. And it's a slightly different method of getting these things out. So, you've got T9s. There's one over the back here. Just angle that up to the camera so you might be able to see it. So, there's T9s. There's one here, as you can see. There's one here at the bottom, as there is on the others, and one on this corresponding edge again where it would have been on the older F1003s and 1116As. And then of course you do have the two standard sort of Phillips head things on this big spring retainer this time, so rather than having the two farting little things there, you've got two underneath this big sort of springy bit of plastic. So we're just going to remove those two knives. And this is the other interesting thing, of course, is that I've been in two of these machines now, and on both machines, because it appears I've got one here, both machines were warranty sealed. They'd never been apart before, and yet two of the screws in the other unit were rounded out at the factory. It would appear that we've got at least the one in this one as well, so it looks like the production quality is as good as it's ever been. And of course I've been paying close attention to the developments around these new consoles, and of course they redesigned all the APU mounting for the heatsink. And of course, stuff like the Blu-ray drive now doesn't have a logic board in there. It's all on board of the motherboard. HDMI encoder IC's changed, albeit it's still one of the Panasonic MN series chips. You know, and things like that. And you think, oh, well, maybe this one's going to be a little bit more reliable, but it would appear that may not be the case. So anyway, so we've got the big spring retainer out now. We've got all 5 screws out of our power supply. Now before, of course, you would have got your finger under this edge and try to pry it up slightly and then lift it out of this edge. You don't do that with this one. You pick it up on the tab on the left side of the power supply and literally hinge it. It makes a lovely snapping noise when you do it, but that's the only way of getting it out. And then, of course, you have the ribbon cable connecting down to the board there. You can just see where my finger is, where the bottom end of the connector is. Give that a pull. And of course, power supply then comes completely free. It is a slightly different unit to the one found in the older original PS4s, if you like. So from that point, you have these 3 ribbon cables for the Blu-ray drive. The left and right cables just pull out. The centre cable is on a traditional sort of clamp style ribbon, so you lift up the edges of the connector, which then unlocks and then just allows you to lift the flat ribbon clean through. And of course we do have a BNC connector there for the wireless. That just pops off as always. It's on some little cable tidies, just run it out through there. So the cables now for our Blu-ray drive are completely disconnected. And then next you do have some screws for the antennas and of course the Blu-ray board. So there's one here which happily isn't hidden underneath the optical ribbon anymore. There's one there in the corner, one there in the corner as there's always been, one there in that corner as there's always been, and the centre screw, which of course used to be a little tiny Phillips one, now serves as the Wi-Fi mounting stick, and of course no more horrible little Phillips screws to take out of there and lose. So we're just going to zip those fine again, T9Rs out. Make that 2. Already make that 3 that are already rounded out. I don't know whether these are just a bad batch of screws that Sony got their hands on, or whether they're just really cheap, crappy quality, but the edges, the edges aren't even properly, the edges of the stars aren't even properly formed. They're just cheap chocolate things. I mean, bearing in mind, Sony have only put this thing together. You know, nobody's had it apart. You know, which makes it really, really bad. Anyway, we're going to leave this ribbon cable in situ for now, and you'll see why later. So, we're just going to pop the DVD drive out now. So we're just going to lift it up. In fact, no, I'll tell you what. We will disconnect this ribbon for now. Just be careful you don't lose it later on. But again, you know, you'll see why in a sec. So anyway, that's the bottom side all disassembled. So we're going to flip back top side. And the hard disk cover comes off pretty much as it more or less always has done. I found these matte black plastic ones actually are a little bit stiffer than the old glossy ones used to be. But then again, maybe it's just my sample of 2 that I've had experience with. Anyway, the same old PlayStation logoed Phillips screw to remove the hard drive, and that's on a slightly different looking caddy these days, as you can see. It's a little bit different. But again, the one screw just pops it out. And then from there, you've got 2 T9Rs holding this black top plastic on, just as you would have done, of course, on the previous models. Yet again, we've got another screw that is malformed. Absolutely awful. Anyway, so as before, you get this back edge here nearest the hard drive bay. Pull it up, and then get the other side, pull that up, and then just slide it up and backwards. And that of course reveals the top half of the chassis. So before we go any further, we will of course remove this ribbon cable. That goes to the Blu-ray drive. So I am just going to plug the other end of that of course back in to our Blu-ray drive once, so we don't lose it until it makes reassembly easier later on. And then we've got some different screws to take out. So we do have some T9Rs, and we're going to remove all of those. So we have T9Rs there, there. There are more of them, of course, and there's one there. We're going to have to remove these 2 to get the board out, that one. I think we started on this bottom one here, so those are all T9Rs. We're also going to have to remove some black sort of Phillips looking screws here, so there's one there, one there, one there, one there, one there. And then we are also going to have to remove these small silver Phillips screws here. And then there's some more black ones here, and then some really tiny Phillips ones here. They're slightly different to these on the top. So there's a variation of different screws in here. So of course the original SAA, SBB revision boards in the CUH-12XX and 1116s just had T9Rs. these have a whole host of different ones. So we're going to start by buzzing out the T9Rs. So if you just watch and pay attention as to where we're taking these out from. So I'm going to start down here. Yet again, we have more screws that I'd say about half the screws in this thing have been rounded off before now. As I say, these haven't been stripped out. These are from factory. So pathetic, really. But as I say, it seems to be the same old problems they're still plaguing these units. And if they can't even get the screws right, and as I say, both of these 1200 series PS4s have had rounded screws in from the factory. It really does not say much for the quality. There's two more there. I've never seen this before. I have never seen a product leave the factory with rounded screw heads before now. But there we go. So anyway. Yep, those are all out now. So now we're going to go and remove the black Phillips screws. And then we've got these 3 silver Phillips screws at the top. There we go. And then there are 2 sort of dome-headed Phillips screws just here. This little shield comes off. And the whole of this assembly, oh, we missed a black screw here. Now the shield can lift up and away. And as you can see, now the APU heatsink clamp is actually held in below the motherboard EMI shield. The connector for the fan is slightly different. The actual fan itself is the same, but the connector is different, which is strange. But nevertheless, these 2 heatsink clamps now are going to, or the screws that secure the heatsink clamp are going to be removed. And then once you've done that, the board itself will lift out. Now then, one thing you do have to be careful of course, is behind that black behind this black plastic cover, which of course sits up in this top corner, when you remove that, do be mindful of this little silver piece here. Now that is basically a little part that sits, it's loose, and it's basically just a thread which secures the Phillips, long Phillips screw through the power supply. That literally just sits in this hole and is loose and is held in place by the power supply screw when it's in place. Once you remove that black plastic cover, it's easy to lose. Don't forget about it like I just did. So just keep that somewhere safe and remember to put it back in there when you're done. But anyway, once you've done that, the power supply button is now a push button rather than a touch sensitive one. I presume they've done that for the Phantom sort of turning on and off and eject and things like that. So they've actually made these push buttons now as opposed to the old touchpads. So again, that can come flying out. Make sure you save that somewhere useful as well. And then obviously the board lifts up and out. This white plastic tab bit just pops out. As you can see, keep that somewhere safe as well. And the board, which of course there, as you can see, is an SAC001. Comes out free, and as you can see, it's a fair bit smaller than the original SAA SAB boards are. There are one or two part changes. As I say, the Wi-Fi module is different. The SCEI branded chip, I think, remains the same, I believe. You will notice, of course, that there are half the RAM blocks on these new boards. The RAM is solely underneath and is not on the top at all, which means masking this board up is going to be a lot easier than it used to be. The Syscon system controller chip is different now. We've got a different revision chip. It's a lot smaller. And that is now an AWO-COL2, still an SCEI branded chip. And we've got an MXIC chip just there, which looks to be a NAND package these times. I presume that's the system flash, as opposed to the old 8-pin package we used to have before. So yeah, there are some interesting component changes on this board. I believe the APU part number is also different now as well. And also there is this little sort of metal clip thing which sits over the ports. That just unhooks. There you go, put that to one side. There's plenty of little fiddly bits to lose out of these. I'm not too keen on that. But as you can see otherwise, the APU is on its own there in the middle of the board, so that's nice and easy. There's nothing around it to really fry there while you've got it on your e-balling station, so that's quite cool. As I say, the RAM's concentrated underneath, so just Captain tape that up so your bottom heaters don't get hold of that. And of course, remember to take off these thermal transfer pads. The Renesas chip there, and all this associated bump, I do believe, is for the Blu-ray drive. Because, of course, a Blu-ray drive now has no integrated PCB there anymore. It is all in the one board, which is cool because that means nobody can go swapping them out and losing them anymore, which is great. So yeah, the Panasonic MN series controller chip is now different as well. So of course before that was an 86471A MN86471A package. Of course, this has now gone to a QFN style package. And there seems to be a lot more pins around the edge, so there is more data I/O out of this one. This one is a MN86479 chip. So again, that's slightly different in revision. It is a more up-to-date one. I do believe it's HDMI 2 compliant.